What's up, guys? Welcome to Starling on Cinemas, and that's Cinemas with an S. And today I'll be giving you my review on Avengers Endgame. Before I begin, if you are new to this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment on the section below, and most importantly, especially watch this one. You are going to love my review on Avengers Endgame. So, the fourth installment of the Avengers series is the once-in-a-lifetime culmination of 22 interconnected films and the climax of an epic journey. Earth's heroes will finally realize how fragile our reality is and the sacrifices that must be made to uphold it, in a story of friendship, teamwork, and setting aside differences to overcome an impossible goal. Wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. That's not Starling. That's not the synopsis. I know. That was only half true. Here's the real synopsis to Avengers Endgame. Taking place 5 years after Avengers Infinity War, the remaining Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, with the help of Scott Lang, must use and embrace the quantum realm so that they can travel back into different points in time in order to bring back their vanquished allies for an epic showdown with Thanos, the evil demigod who decimated the planet and the universe. Now, how do I feel about the story of Avengers Endgame? It's a long story, because while Avengers Endgame is not as consistently paced as Infinity War, it still carries the emotional weight on its shoulders that was brought upon the characters and the audience. When we all saw those victims snap, we were hit. It was a gut punch. It was sad to see these newer characters that we had just gotten warmed up with just go away all of a sudden. The Guardians of the Galaxy, pretty much most of them, making Rocket and Nebula an exception. Spider-Man, Black Panther, the Winter Soldier, Falcon, and Scarlet Witch. Most of the big team players. But the difference between this and Infinity War is that Thanos was the protagonist in Infinity War, and the Avengers are the heroes of their own endgame. It was originally referred to as Avengers Infinity War Part 2, but then the directors decided to call this an Avengers 4, to make it its own separate narrative while still being a continuation. The first 10 minutes or so feel more like an Infinity War Part 2. Now, let me tell y'all something about the first 10 minutes of these movies. Like, you could let me know in the comment section below. Let me ask you this. When you saw all this stuff getting promoted, everything that was promoted, everything that Marvel decided to show in the trailers for Avengers Endgame, how surprised were you of how much they really hid from this movie? Like, they really hid so much from this film. When the teaser trailer came out, they only showed a few shots. When every other TV spot that comes out, they kind of show a little more, but they never show way more than what they want us to see. Now, the first 10 minutes or so feel more like an Infinity War Part 2. And when the movie jumps 5 years into the future, that's when it becomes a completely different film. Now, let's break it down. First act of Avengers Endgame is a more emotional segment with lower stakes and a slower pace, mainly because there is nothing that the heroes can do. They knew what the only way to bring everybody back was, but there was no kind of contingency plan to execute it. However, the film really starts to have the pace of a snail once Scott Lang comes into play. He is the most crucial character the movie has to offer, because when there's Ant-Man, there's the quantum realm. The quantum realm is the key to time travel, just as I explained in my Ant-Man and the Wasp review previously. You can check that video out. When they combine the technology of Stark, Pym, and a little bit of Kree technology there for the visors, you get a fully functioning time-space GPS. As Tony Stark puts it. The second act is completely nostalgic and full of fan service. From references to Back to the Future to Captain America saying, "Hail Hydra," Marvel Studios was starting to meet our expectations and exceed them at the same time. However, it's the second act that kind of adds some real stakes to the mission for two reasons. One, if you are somebody that's going to time travel, you have to be very careful. And I'm not speaking towards the logic of Back to the Future. I'm speaking toward the explanation of the Ancient One when she was saying that time branches are a result of misplacing something in the main timeline unless you fix it. Secondly, this is the first time we see Thanos ever since he was decapitated in the beginning of Infinity War. And this is more the Phase 2 era, you know, that era where everybody was less of a three-dimensional warlord and more of a ruthless conqueror. He was smart enough to figure out what the Avengers from the future are doing and quickly gets involved. I don't know how, but Ebony Maw, which is the telekinetic, was able to reverse engineer these pin particles to bring them back to the future. And finally, the third act will go down in history as one of the most timeless and crowd-pleasing climaxes ever. There are a lot of reasons as to what makes this the best climax in any movie ever. Not just comic book movies, but just this movie specifically in all of cinema. From Captain America lifting Mjolnir to literally every single character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to Iron Man getting the last laugh on Thanos with the Infinity Stones at his possession and restating his own identity, I think it's pretty safe to say that Avengers Endgame is a story that will always be worth your 3 hours. The character roster. Once again, like I said, just like Infinity War and just like Civil War, the Russo brothers managed to balance every character. If there's one thing that's impressive about Endgame specifically, it is the amount of characters that it upholds and how they use those characters. I'm not referring to Thanos' victims to the snap, although they get their time to shine much later in the film. I'm talking about the supporting characters from different individual franchises. Like, that's how big the movie is. Like, if you thought Infinity War was big, watch this. They got Cassie Lang, the Ancient One, Queen Frigga, Howard Stark, Alexander Pierce, Crossbones, Valkyrie, Korg, Meek, etc. In the movie, each of the Avengers are affected by the snap, or decimation as you so call, differently. It helps Steve Rogers to stick closer to his teammates more than ever. Tony Stark has completely started a new life with his family, now married to Pepper Potts and a new daughter, Morgan. Bruce Banner was motivated to perfectly merge his brain inside of the Hulk's body, thus getting Professor Hulk. Hawkeye was driven by vengeance and became Ronin, and Natasha is just miserable. I will say that Thor is the only character that the snap poorly impacts, mainly since he was the closest to stopping this man, but distracted by his ego. So he completely melted himself away with beer and Fortnite. Scott Lang is the true hero of Avengers Endgame. Well, technically it's that rat that saved him, but you know what I'm trying to say. Because if it were not for his presence, there would not have been any time travel, thus no nostalgia, therefore no epic battle with everybody involved. The two characters in this movie who are given the most screen time are Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, the two flagship heroes of the franchise. These are two characters we have not seen before this point since Civil War. That's why they lost, because fans could figure if these two were not together when Thanos came to town, the team would hit rock bottom, and they certainly did. These two characters have the biggest journeys among everybody else because they literally come full circle. Iron Man goes from point A to point B from his selfish attitude, gone selfless gratitude and heroism. As for Cap, he went from point A to point B back to point A. Get it? Because he went back in time. He started in 1941, then he went back in time. So yes, that's what that is. We first saw him in 1941, and that is where we finally see him living a life that he never got to live. And he even lives up to his title, the Man Out of Time. There were even a couple of loose ends that were tied, such as Peter never getting a hug from his mentor, Steve's rain check on his dance with Peggy Carter, Tony never getting quality time with his father, Cap budging Mjolnir only so we could see him lifting it here, and speaking of which, the biggest loose end in the MCU. Avengers! Assemble. Rotten Tomatoes gives Avengers Endgame a 94% score. When I tell you that this movie is a true culmination of 22, if we could ask, if you were to grant the wish of a fan who were to get a genuine ending to a franchise he was following for 11 years and 22 movies, we couldn't have asked for a better ending than this. Then all of the fan service, then all of the callbacks, all of the references, tying up all the loose ends. We could not have asked for a more satisfying conclusion. So for that, I will give this movie a perfect score. 10 SOs out of 10. Now, of course, this movie is not without some of its flaws. I get it. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. I'm saying it's a perfect conclusion to an entire book, to an Infinity Saga. So that is my review on Avengers Endgame. You can let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys next time with my next video. Peace out.